Hi everyone, welcome back to the Final Cut Pro 10 Virtual User Group number 3. So, I thought it was a good way to say that. So anyway, this is Alex Lindsay, of course, and we are here with some people that one new person, a couple of the veterans here. So of course we have Mark Spencer. Hey Mark.
Hey Alex.
And we have Steve Martin.
Hey, good to see you.
Brand new, Bill Davis.
Hi, Mom. Yeah. Have to do that. It's important.
Also, Sam Messman.
Hey, guys.
And Mike Matzdorf.
Thanks for having me back.
It's great to have you back. So we're a little injured there. You took a little hit.
I fell on my skateboard. I was riding with my son, and I hit a stone and face planted into the concrete.
So you did well.
I did great.
Yeah, that's well for
I
that.
still got 2 eyes.
We're glad, because it would have really been, we would have had an empty space. And
yes.
What to do with it. So anyway, we're going to, of course, get to your questions. If you're watching this on YouTube, remember that you can go to bit.ly/FCP X VUG3. It's FCP VUG3. So anyway, you're probably watching it there because that's the only link we've been promoting. But if you are watching it somewhere else, now we're going to go around and do tips. But we are also going to take your questions. So if you've got questions, post them all the time, vote them up and down. Look at the ones that have been posted already and vote those first, and then go through and ask new questions. And so, but we're hoping that you'll join us in the conversation through Hazu. So now, before we get started, one of the things I'm trying to play around with adding new things to the system. Now, one of them is, if you show a wide shot, we've got this new table. See the little table. So this slow, and we got a wide shot. That was something that it was. We finished the low, and everyone at the last one was kind of like, it'd be really nice if we had a wide shot. So take a breath every once in a while. So now we have a wide shot, and this is the guys have been building. We build a new table almost every event. So this is the newest one, and Marty actually pointed out, Marty Brennis, who you'll see in a second, pointed out, we're going to be building it all around 6. If you did 5, you wouldn't have any problem with the cameras. Because we were constantly trying to keep the cameras out, and after we finished the table. Anyway, so anyway.
Live from the Hexagon, here we are.
Keith, there'll be another table. So anyway, so that'll be coming up. But definitely, as you see the show, by the way, if you have any questions or any comments, definitely leave them on. Of course, during the show, put them in Hazu. After the show, put them in YouTube. Share with your friends, all that stuff. So one of the things we're trying to do is add some stuff where we might show some products. Now, eventually, we might bring in vendors and so on and so forth. But we have our own because we were testing some stuff, so we figured, well, that would be a good example or a good test. So so here, if we cut out to outside, there's Marty, and he's got a box wireless transmitter. So so what you see there is, of course, the transmitter. The transmitter is up here. Oh, he just moved it. So there you can announce his head. So so here you have this is just our little HD SDI, and you've got these little transmitters here. This is the back, and so this is actually a whole bunch of little antennas that are here, that are kind of that are put in there, and then of course this is the receiver, and we tested this. We were really really happy with it. Marty, you can go ahead and turn those back around and turn that guy around. We've been really happy with the test. So one of the things we did today is we took it outside and we ran it 3 full blocks. So and I have to figure out the measurements, but it was a solid football field and a half, maybe almost 2 football fields in length. And it gets very directional at that distance. So
maybe line of sight has to see
it's not very line of sight when you you're close to it. So you'll see that Marty's gonna walk around. Go ahead and walk around, and you just show the video there. You can let us just talk over the video. Cut to his video. There we go. So here's his video coming out. Now that grain that you see is actually, that's just the camera. That's not the transmission. And so he's going in. You'll get a little behind the scenes view of TWiT. It's the afternoon here, so they're broadcasting, so he's going to be very quiet. So this is way over line of sight. Lots of metal, lots of walls, lots of other things, and we're getting a crystal clear vision of this thing. And anyway, so that's all we have there. So you can kind of see that it's a pretty good, as far as a test goes. It's a pretty solid test of, we're not seeing any kind of frame dropping. We're not seeing snow. We're not seeing all the things that we might see otherwise. And so you can just kind of see as we move through. Here we come again, coming through here. And so that's a pretty difficult thing to do with wireless cameras fairly often. and we're now you're going to see the what we call the Mines of Moria. I don't know if we're going to go down there or not. So our basement here. And someone should stop Marty before it gets.
Whoa!
Yeah. Okay. That's enough.
Cut.
There we go. It's a big mess down there. That's how everything gets sorted out
The
down
old
there.
table.
So there you
Wow.
have it. So, but now we're in the
Wow.
basement. Okay, so anyway, so now we've cut to the other camera. So anyway, but you can see that that's a pretty good transmitter.
That was
And
awesome.
Now
Fantastic.
it's pretty impressive, and so we've been really looking for the right transmitter to get or to rent or whatever, and so but that's Box Technologies, BOXX is not the same as the computer company that sells really fast or used
Cloud.
to sell. Or do they still sell
Box
fast stuff?
was.
Anyway.
Yay, Marty, for his Carol Merrill impression. Nice.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, so that was, we just thought we'd show you a little bit of that. We've been pretty impressed with it. Price range is, professional level, so it's 20 grand, for the send and receive. What's cool about it is it's one to many. So I think you can have up to 4 transmitters, or 4 receivers. So you can have 1 transmitter on something, and then you can have 4 receivers. So for instance, you could be in a stadium, then you can have another one in the locker room. The camera would walk out of one and into the next, and it's not that it keeps that connection smooth, but it would be one of those things, as an editor, I could just switch from one signal to the next. So without having to, having a different camera, transmitter, or anything else. And so anyway, we thought that was kind of cool.
This
And
used to be something only the big political conventions could do. This is an amazing thing at that price point.
at that price point, absolutely, yeah. There's definitely, there's a lot of them. There's small ones that we've gotten that are $2,000 or $3,000, and we haven't tested the new Teradek Pro, Pros yet. The other thing is this is 0 latency, so if you're shooting it with wired cameras, you're not going to, in a concert or something like that, you're not going to lose sync. So that's another thing that's that's really useful for it. So about 300 to 600 feet is what they're rated for, and you can get a little bit more if you make it stationary. So anyway, just thought we'd show this off. We're going to try to show something physical every time we do this, just to play around with the process of doing that. So if you like that, let me know. I'm going to look in here and just see if we've got any specific questions here, but no, not yet. So if you have any questions, let us know. And we're going to go ahead and start with the first demo. And I think that Steve was the 1st
I'll
victim.
be first up to bat then.
You're up.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so I really like the retiming tools in Final Cut Pro 10. I've always thought they were not only utilitarian, but they're fluid, they're fun. They're fun to use, especially when you get little colored bars and whatnot that kind of tell you what you're doing. I'm going to go ahead and open up this project here and open up this one. And here I have a timeline with 2 connected clips on it. And this is from a recent shoot I did down in the Caribbean with I took my 5D underwater there, Alex. So
Nice.
yeah.
How much was that rig?
That rig was it was Aquatica housing. The housing was aluminum. It was like a $3,000 housing.
Nice.
I mean, the housing's more than the camera.
Yeah.
But you really want to put your camera in it. Good housing.
Taking your 5D without a housing into the water.
Oh yeah,
Generally
it
bad
doesn't
idea.
doesn't
Same.
bad.
It's not going to work. It's not going to work at all.
So let's talk about retiming clips that are actually connected to the primary storyline. And this tip I won't even take credit for. I'll give this to Mark. He said, "Hey Steve, did you know you can do this?" And he showed me some things with it, and we were playing around with it. I thought it was kind of cool. So let's say I want to retime this clip that's connected, and I'm going to go ahead and select it and press Command R and bring up the retiming bar. And you'll know when you adjust the timing bar by dragging on the handle here. And by the way, I have a new toy here. I can actually do that. See, right there, that timing bar. That one right there. Okay.
That's the new toy. We keep on adding things. We keep on. It's useful, isn't it?
Right. So I'm going to clear that out. But notice as I drag this, if I maybe want to make it slower or faster, notice it's adjusting from the tail of the clip. Notice that's adjusting from the tail. All right, that may be useful, but here's a problem. I have this gap right here. I'd like it to adjust where maybe the head adjusts to kind of fill in this gap over here. And here's the key. Here's the key right here. It's this little connection line right there. See that little connection line? I call that the snorkel, but it's a connection line. A connection point. But what I'm going to do is change the connection
So you
point.
basically describe everything in Final Cut in nautical or diving terms.
I guess I can't help it. That's right. So a lot of times you want to change that connection point because for whatever reason your clip's connected to a clip you're planning on deleting, well, if you delete that clip, the connected clip goes with it. Right. So sometimes you want to change a connection point, but I'm going to use it in particular for a speed change. Watch this. Command and Option key held down. I'm going to click right on top of the clip and watch the connection point. It moves. So now we see the connection point has been moved there to the center of the clip. So it's wherever you Option click, that connection point will move to. Now,
Option command.
Command Option command.
Hold them both.
Now check it out. This is pretty nifty. Now I'm going to drag the timing bar, and Mark showed me this. Notice what happens, that it's now adjusting around the connection point.
Oh,
that's the anchor point.
So I think nothing. Yes, it's like an anchor point. So I'm gonna undo that. So because really what I want to do is have it adjust outweigh this direction, fill the gap. So what I'm going to do is Option click down here towards the end of the clip, move the connection line down there. Now you can see the connection lines there at the end, and I'm going to drag the timing bar, and check it out. I'm going to fill in that gap.
All right,
that's awesome.
There you go. I thought this was pretty cool. And Mark actually showed me one other thing that's actually, well, I didn't know that you could do this. And let's say you wanted to turn this into a storyline. Now you could, of course, command click both of these, and then you can turn it into a storyline. Was it G? Or Option G. But he showed me that if, let's see, if you select this clip, and now I think you hold down G first, right, Mark?
Either way.
Hold down G, and if you drag this clip and touch the one previous to it, you'll see, it turns. You get a little shelf. Release your mouse, and you've just placed it inside of a secondary storyline. I didn't know that, so I thought that was kind of fun. So now both those clips are encased, as it were, into a single movable clip unit. And so there's my tip.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah, kind of fun, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great tip. We've got one question so far. This is from Thomas Carter. And he said, I work at a commercials and film edit house where more editors are coming around to FCP 10. What features can you see Apple potentially introducing which will benefit high-end users? Or what do you think that they need to add? Or this is open for anyone.
I hear the sound of crickets.
Big topic.
What do we think is really missing?
Well, there's one thing that I can think of that's missing, which is it's such a throwback, and I come from the feature world, is there's not any way to make any kind of screening notes with thumbnails. Like if you were in an Avid, you would just print a bin. And there's super backwards ways to do that clumsily. Is clumsily a word? Yeah.
Yes.
But that would be something that I would like to see. Like you have, like say for example, you have your dailies, you string them out in a sequence, you put markers on what you want the poster frames to be, and you say make notes, and it goes and makes a bunch of notes with the reference frames that you've chosen and the descriptions that are in the notes field.
Yeah.
We have a friend who's a feature film editor who loves Final Cut Pro, 7, 10, whatever, but the one thing that keeps him back, that he keeps saying he wants, is better audio capabilities. He wants to be able to mix audio, because he puts a ton of
And I think Final Cut 10 is
in.
a lot better than Final Cut 7.
Are you saying he wants an actual dedicated audio mixer?
He wants a mixer.
Right.
You want something like in the multicam, but so you go into an environment where there's a mixer that you can actually do.
Yeah, 7 had a mixer. But or I should say something like Soundtrack Pro has a mixer, some kind of mixing capability directly in.
Well, I think there's a couple things that are, yes, there's what we had talked about before, and we were talking about this in the car, is a roles-based mixer. So you know, in other worlds you have subgroups, whether it's music or sound or Avid or whatever, you have subgroups that you can route things to, and the roles fill that need as far as routing something to a place, but then you need to have control over the place. And I think a roles-based mixer would be awesome. I mean, Logic has an iPad app that you can work with on the fly, and something similar to that would be really cool.
And sound people are so used to having subgroups and all sorts of other outboard controls, loop-throughs that you can put processing into. This part of it, not that part of it. So there's just a lot of things that the audio guys, I think, would love to have access to.
Well, I think that leads to a bigger thing of a better integration with probably ProSound for audio turnover. So the Logic round trip, I think, is not where it needs to be at the moment, and that would probably solve a lot of these mixing issues, because basically that's what Logic is a mixer. You know, that's what you're doing in there. So, you know, even just to be able to get out to Logic a lot easier, and if it worked and it was more integrated, would, I know, save me quite a bit of trouble, because the OMF and AAF nightmare is really just impractical. And I wish Pro Tools would add XML support, but if I could just send my rolls into Logic, once I've basically done all my stuff, and maybe bring in XML with some of the EQs and some of the same filters that are coming from Logic anyway, that might be a huge time saver as opposed to having to restart the mix when I go to Pro Tools.
I do wonder what the split is, though, between the people who would like to go off into a separate environment like that and do all their work there, versus the number of editors who would like to have something a little more robust inside 10 to be able to keep in the program and do more of these functions built in.
One thing, though, is I think in a lot of cases people are used to, I mean, you would probably love to be able to integrate the faders and all that stuff, but there are certain things in the app that a lot of people don't even know are there. Like, it's surprising how many people don't know about audio component editing when you talk with them. So, and there's certain things you can do with components that work very much like a mix, and you can do a lot of that on the fly. So the question is, what are you trying to do, you know?
Very good. Okay, another question here. One more question here. This is from Martin Boer. Boer. Hopefully that's right. Have you guys ever compete against Premiere Pro or Avid users to see which software is the fastest, starting from scratch until a complete script-based export with grading?
Did you write an art? Did you not write something about this one? A blog?
Who wrote that in that question?
That is Martin Boer.
Okay, so what is fast? And how do you define fast? And I've seen this a lot. I've talked to a lot of guys who say, here's how I do things in my traditional NLE kind of thing, and I want to do that faster. And it's this process of trying to tell them, you know, look, it doesn't work the same way entirely. So are you concerned about your overall, how long does it take me to get the whole project done? Or are you sitting here focused in the storyline saying, how fast can I edit the way I used to edit before I switched to the 10 way of thinking? And I think those are two different things. What I've found personally is that I used to go through this process where I would get freaked because I'd have 10 days to finish a big corporate project or something like that, and on day 4 or 5 I'm still working in the event browser, I'm still keywording things, and I'm getting just like sweaty going, oh my God, I'm gonna miss my deadline. And then if I had 10 days, what I used to find out over and over again was that, hey, I'm done in 7. I'm done in 7 days. I used to be done in 10 days, and I was freaked out in the middle because I was spending this time doing things that I didn't think was editing, but and the bottom line was that overall I got done much faster.
So you're saying if all your metadata tagging in organization makes the actual edit go really fast because you know how to grab clips, you've got them favorited.
Come right to you in a keystroke or two.
It just comes together very quickly.
Yeah, so you have to really look at how long is it taking me to get projects done once I've learned this in this software versus how long did it take me before I had a tool like this.
All I was going to say is that the other thing is it's also, I think, a function of how often are you going to have to edit it, how many times you're going to interact with your client. The one thing that we see a lot of and that I'm very, with our editors, that I'm very methodical about is be very careful as you build your project. Be very methodical, you know, setting that project up, because what happens is the clients start making a bunch of requests, they start making a bunch of changes, we start doing other things. If you didn't set that structure up correctly when you began, it just turns into this, you know, mess. And now you're editing over here and it's breaking something over there, and so. But I see a lot of editors who want to go fast, and so they just start throwing things in there and they just want to get something really quickly. And a lot of times that isn't, you know, even for a very quick edit, a fast turn edit that we have, we do a lot of stuff that is less than 24 hours, sometimes less than 8 hours after an event. We're going to cut down the live event, like what we're doing here, and put that together. And I tell people it's going to be an 8-hour edit, and the first 3 or 4 hours is just organizing stuff. You know, and then you'll just you'll cruise through it. But don't try to get it done in 4 hours, because that's going to set you up for failure every time you make a change.
Their mindset is you don't start editing until you get onto your primary storyline and you start cutting things and trimming things, and that's very important. But you will find that if you're really good on this front end, that stuff will go a lot faster than you sometimes ever thought possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think like people know their tools, you know, and if someone's great on Avid, they're going to be really fast. Presuming like the same level of knowledge across the board, I think Final Cut's faster. just presuming like a skilled operator is using the machinery, I think it's faster for almost everything. And I also think that the time spent is better spent because there's less time with fiddling, or like, oh, this track goes here, this track goes here, move this here, move this here. There's less time spent with the physical, mechanical handling of the tool versus being creative. And I think there was like a switch from film to Avid, and then from Avid to this. There's sort of a ratio of like spending more time with the technical handling and less time with the creative, then more time with the technical handling and less the creative. And then that flips when you get to Final Cut. And there's just more creative time because it is generally faster.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think that's a piece that's it's not talked about enough.
And in terms of a real-world direct comparison, actually, you guys mentioned it on the last user group, but this actually, I wish I was here because yes, this actually happened. We did this, and the reality is there was, and I think a lot of it got lost in translation in terms of what the point of it was. The point, it all has to do with the editor at the end of the day, and how quick and talented and together and experienced they are. But in terms of getting up and running and getting started, the tools that are in Final Cut are simply just not present in other NLEs. So the thing that I typically run into is you don't even know to work that way unless you've worked that way. And, so we went out and did this project in Bulgaria, and because we worked in a completely different way than how the other people were working, we were able to be up and ready to edit in a fraction of the time than the other guys are, and then you can spend your time editing. And that's really that's the only purpose of what you're trying to do anyway. So in terms of a direct comparison, you can, within 10 minutes of being done shooting, have a fully synced, renamed, with completely searchable script supervisors, metadata, 100% ready to edit from your camera originals if you plan it properly and you communicate. So there are those tools. I mean, Shot Notes and Lumberjack are two very good examples of you leveraging some of the new ways of processing information to come into a modern nonlinear editor and be able to just start doing these things that you were talking about that can take hours to get into.
You got to get everybody on board with it. I mean, that's the thing, and that's when, in the pre-production meetings, and people just have to be ready to say, they have to be game for it. Mm-hmm. Because there's different stuff, and there's different stuff that people say, oh, well, I always do it this way. That just doesn't work sometimes in this world. So,
and building on that, we had one question that was emailed in. And this was from Pat Southern, is that right? He said, Chris Fenwick did an interview with August Flack at the end of August. Austin Flack at the end of August. In his interview, Austin mentioned Avid's superior collaborative tools and script sync. How do you think Apple could better Avid at its own game? I know that we started down the path yesterday.
I was talking to him yesterday.
Yeah. So anyway, is there things that Apple would need to add or could add to compete with these collaborative tools and script sync?
Well, there's line-based keywords, right, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, thanks. I think yes, it could be better. I mean, Apple has a lot of speech recognition stuff. It would be cool if it could recognize it, and you could. It would be cool if it worked. It doesn't work right now. We on the movie I just finished a little while back, we had we keyworded lines. We had keywords for groups of 3 lines throughout every scene in the script, and they were searchable to a degree. It's a lot of prep.
That's what assistants are for.
When there is 60 lines in a scene with improvisation and restarts and back to one, or restart in the middle of a scene or whatever, all the your markers and your keywords, it all gets a little clogged, and it takes a lot of time to sort that out because it is one of those things where you have to watch every moment and stop and mark and type and stop and mark and type. And automating something like that is really difficult. And even with script sync, when people start going off book, improving, restarting, there's a bit of massaging that needs to be done.
And actually to pick up on that, I actually listened to that podcast, and here's the thing: it's like it comes down to price versus performance, because, you know, for instance, Avid bin locking is great, but also being able to, it depends on what you're really trying to do, because if you have multiple editors, like how often and in what situations are multiple editors going to be attacking the same exact timeline? I mean, because I've never really edited in the Google Docs fashion, you know, with someone else, and like, so how often do you really need to do that, and how much is it worth to you? Because yeah, Avid is, you know, without a doubt at the moment the industry standard when it comes to collaborative workflow. But, you know, if you look at also some of the ISIS systems and how expensive those are versus some of these other tools, and also what no one talks about is Avid tools don't work very well with anything else besides Avid. So can you bring some of that script sync stuff and some of these other things to other places, or are you locked into that one place and none of the other apps that come with it? So, you know, in terms of that, what are some tools that they can add? It'd be great if you could add the bin locking functionality, you know, either through Xsan or through somewhere else. But, you know, I did listen to the podcast as well, and I think there's dismissing the group capabilities that are currently in Final Cut, I think probably shouldn't happen, because, I don't know, do you guys find that like the group passing empty libraries is difficult or hard?
The transfer library?
Yeah.
There's a couple of things, and I think Avid is too loose about some things. Final Cut is too tight about some things, and it's the same thing, like you say, bin locking. If you're on an Avid, at least this is the way it was last time I touched Avid, which was 6.5, you can open up a bin that somebody else has open. It'll show locked on the bottom. Presuming you're paying attention to that little tiny lock that's on the bottom, you're fine. If you open up a bin that's locked, you can open up a sequence. You can start to work on that sequence. And then when you go to save it, it's going to say, hey, that's locked, sorry. And then you have to scramble before the machine crashes to copy what you've been doing somewhere else. And so that's not right either. It is easier to go back and forth, no question about it. But the whole Final Cut thing, if you're working off a SAN, like libraries on a SAN, not so good. But if you have a transfer library on a SAN, that's okay, because all you really need to do is drop a project in an event and send that across, which is far better than it used to be, as you well know. Yeah. But it's one extra step, really, and there is, like, editors need particular libraries that should match. Assistants don't, for the most part. They should have a library handy, but they don't need to have it open all the time. They don't need to move things in and out of it. Mm-hmm. And so there's pluses and minuses to the way both of them work. But I've gone crazy a few times on the Avid where I've been working on something for 20 minutes and then realized I couldn't save it.
Ooh. So you mean there's no perfect system?
You're being facetious. Or is it sarcastic?
All right. Next tip. Are you ready? I think we'll go to Mark.
Oh, all right.
Are you ready, Mark?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. Here we go.
Discussion.
Let's see if we can get to it. We've got this super huge mouse here so we can see. So one thing that I do all the time is real-time GoPro footage. And what I mean by that, I'm going to Shift F to reveal this clip in the browser here, and Command forward go to the inspector. So I have this video clip, and if I go to its info, it's shot at, let me use this. Can I also zoom in and do that? Oh, you can. Look at that. It's cool. so this shot in particular, it's 60 frames per second clip. So to shoot 1080i or 1080-60. And then what I do, if I'm in this project, you can also reveal that project in the browser, Option Shift F. And if we look at this project's properties over here, this project is 24 frames per second. And I do that on purpose.
By the way, it's printed at the bottom of the timeline too, which is nice.
Oh, yeah. I always forget that. Down here, let me circle.
Yeah, right there.
Arrow right down there, because I forget. Oh, I covered it right up. But yeah, 24 frames per second. You pointed that out once. I had never even seen that. I never looked at it.
Forget that it's there.
But the reason I do that by default, if you drop a 60 frame per second clip into a 24 frame per second clip timeline, it will play at normal speed. So it's just my son doing a diving thing in the water. So, but what I like about this, the fact that I have it in a 24 timeline, frames per second, is I can do slow motion and use all 60 frames, slow it down to 24 frames per second, which gives a slow motion about 40% of the regular speed, but uses all the frames. And I usually like to slow a part of it down. So I'll move forward to maybe here, and I'll hit Command B, Shift B, because Command B will just blade the clip. So Shift B will do a blade rather than just cutting the clip. And then I'll move forward in time maybe here, and Shift B. And then this middle part is the part I want to retime. And not the whole thing, just this little middle part right here. So with the playhead over that little section, I can go to the retime menu and choose automatic speed, which will then force this section.
Click right on. Oh, do me a favor. Zoom in. Just zoom in slightly.
Yeah.
And then now try click on the bar just to the side of the words.
Thank you.
There
we go. There we go. There we go. So automatic speed, and now I'll zoom out a little bit so we can see and play through this. And now this little middle section will ramp into a slow motion and do a nice little slow-mo. Now, that's great, but the thing is, this going up here to choose automatic speed like that gets old. I do it a lot. I'm doing a lot of this blading, so I want to assign a keyboard shortcut to do this automatic speed. So that's really my tip. I'm actually going to undo that automatic speed adjustment. And so at first I thought, oh, I'll just go assign a keyboard shortcut. So I go to Final Cut Pro, Commands, and Customize. And we're currently in the default set, so I'll choose to duplicate the default set. We'll just call it Copy Default. And so I type in automatic, and I get nothing down below. You know, I've got nothing. I've typed in automatic, and like, what's going on? Why can't I assign a keyboard shortcut for automatic speed? So then I think, okay, I know. So this automatic speed is under the Modify menu, Modify, Retime, Automatic Speed. All right, so it's under the Modify menu. So if I go back to look at the Customize here, you're able to look at your menus down in this left corner here. So I'm right here in this menu items, okay? So if I go down to Modify, and we scroll down, I make this a little bigger, and we scroll down. Oh, you can't do your mouse wheel in here. So Retime, check it out. There's no Modify, there's Modify, Retime, Conform.
That was the
speed.
old thing it was called.
That was the old name for automatic speed, which I actually like better because that's what you're doing. You're conforming a 60 frame per second to a 24 frame per second timeline. So you can select it there, or if you were to search on the word conform, it'll show up. So that's kind of the trick, is you need to search on conform.
You know what the old menu name was called.
You need to go to the feedback button and say, why is conform called?
Yeah. So now if I want to send a keyboard shortcut, I'll choose Command Shift. There, Command Shift, and the C is now available. So if I just type a C, Command Shift C.
For conform, Mark?
Yeah, conform. Yeah, I'm doing conform. I like the idea of conform.
Last letter in automatic is C.
So I'll save that. So now just to see if it works. In fact, if when I now go to the Modify menu under Retime, we'll see automatic speed has the keyboard shortcut.
Automatic speed has a
Okay. So now it's just a matter of once I set up the clips, and sometimes I'll do it the entire clip. I won't blade a clip, but what did I say? Shift Command C. There it goes.
Yep.
Shift Command C. Okay, we'll just do it, and because I do it a lot, and it's just one of those workflow things that speeds things up. So I can just put my playhead over clip, Shift Command C, and it conforms it, and we'll make it slow motion.
Well, one other thing too is interesting. There is a a custom. I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't notice this before. I don't know why. I was playing with this morning. There's the automatic feature right there in the
too.
custom menu.
Yeah,
which is like, was it Control Option R will bring up this window, and then you just click that
and you
box.
click that.
That's great.
I didn't notice that checkbox before. They must have just
Maybe
added
they
that
slipped it.
recently.
It might
They
be.
might have slipped that one in.
Use 10.1.3 or
I feel
something.
like that happens a lot.
That's a good tip, huh?
Yeah, that's great. Another question we have from Alexander Golner.
Alex
4D.
Alex. So he says that the Hamburg Pro Media is no longer selling their export products. Should we turn to someone else or wait to see if someone else will sell Hamburg Pro Media's tools?
Is he referring specifically to X2 Pro?
No, he's MXF.
MXF.
Oh, MXF.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
sorry.
MXF. It covered here. Yep.
Yeah. Who knows?
I've used it. It works. I mean, if you're.
But now you can't buy it.
Yeah. I guess it would be cool to have somebody buy if they want to have a project that can sort of go both ways, Avid or
Final Cut. A
Final
little bit
Cut.
of discussion on the boards as to what happened and why they stopped selling it, because it's still kind of a viable product. And for a while, even after they announced it, it was still on the board. You could download some versions of it. You couldn't download a few versions of it. So it seems to be in limbo for the moment.
Does it? I mean, I don't. There's certain things it handles and certain things it doesn't handle, right? There's like it won't handle like the Sony stuff coming out of the Sony cameras, but it'll handle the Avid Media. But MXF, I mean, I know a little bit about it.
It's tough. If you shoot on a C300 or one of those, you get these things where you want to bring the footage in. It's not going to come directly into Final Cut sometimes, although now it might. I was shooting on a C300 right about the time they did the Mavericks release, and I ran into this problem. The parser that was supposed to read the footage suddenly wouldn't launch and work under Maverick, so I had to kind of back my system up and go back to the operating system before in order to download the little init to get the footage translated. Once I got it in there under the old system, when I put Mavericks back on, it understood that codec, and it would bring MXF format from a C300 directly into my timeline. So sometimes you run across when they're revving things, these little temporary mess ups that just drive you nuts for a week and a half or 2 weeks. Then they go away, and you never have to think about them again. That's my least favorite kind of problem.
What is the purpose of these codecs, though? Like, why?
Partially, I think a lot of them are proprietary. They're developed.
But why?
Well, intellectual property maybe is the answer to that, because like Apple owns ProRes, so Apple can do anything they want with ProRes. And they owned QuickTime, or they're part of the consortium for QuickTime, or some of these things like H.264, I think they're part of the consortium, so they have a licensed ability to add those directly into the interface, no hassles, no mess-ups. But if somebody else owns a codec and they don't have clear rights to it, and this is just me guessing, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm certainly not an IP lawyer or anything close to that, but it seems like, you pull up that share library in Apple and you go, well, I can go out to these things, but I can't go out to anything else. And I want to go out to a WMV file, why can't I? And I think often that's the answer, is because there's a licensing problem in the way that they just can't, Apple can't export to that.
I think there's also, with a lot of different formats, whether it's 3D formats or video formats or whatever you're building, is when you're, by submitting or allowing yourself to deal with a standard, it means you're limited to whatever that standard is. And so you may decide that there are things that you would love to have. I'm notorious for dropping. I'm notorious for both applying standards to things that we're working on, and then also saying we're going to do something completely different than everyone else because I'm not happy with the way those standards are managed. So so you may decide you might want to change the way you're wrapping the codec, because that's going to give you the extra metadata that you want, that you might be shipping with your camera, and you can't. There's not enough of them in the standards. So obviously, creating standards that are open enough that let you do that. And a lot of companies like ILM, when it's done some of its image formats and so on and so forth, created a lot of extra stuff in that format specifically so that it's an easy standard for everyone. Now the problem you end up then is everyone uses that standard, but they use it in different ways because now they've got all these extra registries that they can work with. So, but I think that's the big thing, is people want to do something, they've decided that they can't shoehorn it into this format, and so they've added something because it adds extra metadata or something else.
So I guess my only perspective as an end user who needs to deal with these things,
it's a nightmare,
is like, why can't I push the space bar and see it play? I mean, like, in this day and age, like, on what planet, like, are they designing these things where, like, and they're trying to sell a lot of these to consumers, like XD Cam and some of these other things where it's like, why can't I watch this from my Finder?
Well, we don't like to work with any of the camera formats. So, like, for us, it's like,
you convert everything, right?
Well, we convert everything, but also we don't even record off the cameras typically. So we're almost always. It is very, very rare for us to record to camera. We're almost always taking an SDI feed, and then we have usually a Pix 240. We used to have Key Pros. We still have some Key Pros around, or the Blackmagic. Recorder, studio recorders, but we have some version of that, and we're always recording those because we just wanted an app in ProRes or DNX, and we don't want to nothing in between, because the other thing is it's crap. I mean, the bottom line is, you know, like
There's that small problem.
you know, I mean, LT is higher quality than anything you're going to get off of most of these cameras.
So
I mean,
then-
now some of the higher end cameras now, the Reds or some of them that are able to do bigger, higher frame rates.
Let me tell this quick little story though, because last year I did the Rocky Mountain Emmy Awards show reels, and so we got 600 to 700 submissions from all over the Southwest, from all of these TV stations, big major network stations, little tiny small town stations. So these 600 files come in. We get down to 100 finalists, and I'm trying to work with these, and I'm seeing codecs that I have never seen before. It's like, what did people shoot this on? Was this like from some Parker Vision toy camera? And in fact, there's this cool little tool, if people don't know about this, called Media Info. It's just a little tiny init. You can just search on that. It's this little thing, you drop a video file on it, it'll tell you what the underlying codec is, what the encoding standards, what the audio frame and the
What's
frame
it
rates
called
are.
again?
Media Info.
Media Info.
Quick, I think it's free. Great little, so I was taking these files and I was throwing them on there, and most everything was fine. Like, okay, I can see where this came from. We were getting things in through FTP. I had thumb drives shipped in the mail. I was getting things on discs. And I was like, how do I figure all this out? 10 was able to get probably 93 to 94% of these files from all over everywhere and simply work with them. Some files, though, it's just like I'd throw them on Media Info and it would be blank. It's like, where the heck did this come from? What's the codec? What's going on? And I'm going to give a shout out to whoever it is in the open source community who develops Handbrake. That was the one thing that saved my rear end. Handbrake was able to open every one that I wasn't able to open inside 10 directly or through Telestream Episode or any of the other converters that I
You look
had.
at MPEG Streamclip at all?
I tried that in a couple
It's
of
like
cases.
a giant can opener, it really is.
Yeah,
Parent is
Handbrake
gone,
was
isn't
for
it?
me the one that opened all my last little bin of 10 files that I could not figure out how to get into the program, and was able to transcode them all into ProRes directly there, and got the show finished.
And that gets into like the standards. I know I had to work on an award show a long time ago, and they said, well, what do we do as they get set up for submissions? I was like, here are the requirements. You may submit it in H.264 with this thing, or Apple ProRes or DNX. Period. Like you know, and we will return your submission.
Figure it out.
We will return your submission, because what I was just like, it's either they spend an extra 10 minutes or I spend an extra 10 minutes times 100.
Times 100.
You know, and so I'd rather just push it on them and just send it back. Just say, hey, it's great for you. And you know, then the other side of that was we just had people would submit stuff in, we'd kick it back to them really quickly, saying this isn't a supported format, please fix it, and they'd fix it because they want to get their little statue.
Right.
You know, you know, so they were, you know, and they you know, they've got a reason to do that. One of the things that I just started playing with that I'm actually has saved me recently was this little program. I don't know, guys, have you seen Divergent Media's Edit Ready?
No.
So Edit Ready basically takes, you know, you can have a variety of different things, but it just pushes it, it transcodes quickly to ProRes. So if you want to get something into ProRes quickly, and I've had we had a file last week that we had to put into an edit, and we literally couldn't. I'd open it in QuickTime, and you couldn't see it. Like it said QuickTime, it was exported out of, you know, like it said.
I think I had one of those.
And it was just a white frame, and you could hear the audio. And if you previewed it, you could see it. Like if you hit the space bar, you
Is
could
that
see
what you're
it.
talking about, Sam? That?
Yeah,
And you were like,
stuff like that. It just shouldn't ever happen.
it always happens. I don't know, it almost always happens when it's coming out of the Adobe workflow, and I don't know what it is about the way that it's being compressed from media. There is some setting.
Some kind of header.
There's some header or something.
There's all kinds of weird stuff that you have to actually be very careful about in Final Cut 10 with FFmpeg. If anyone's using it, you have to be very careful with that stuff because it will work, but it's not really working, and you may see all kinds of performance problems because of.
Well, we've talked in the past with mine is. What I put into Final Cut, I know that it supports many different formats. What I put into Final Cut is Apple ProRes.
Yeah.
Right.
And everything gets, somebody
But even
converts it to Apple ProRes before it gets to
But
me.
this is the tricky thing, though, is in some cases you may have stuff that's Apple ProRes, but depending on where it was encoded, it may not have the same performance as regular Apple ProRes. So if you want to be sure that your stuff is coming in correctly, if you batch export through compressor,
Right.
if you're having a problem with 2 ProRes clips, and you're not sure, and you think one of them may have been encoded with FFmpeg, run it through compressor. You should see a drastically different performance boost.
Yeah. So anyway, so this I took it in here. I threw it in there. I was like, last ditch. You know, got a couple minutes left before.
In Edit Ready, you threw it in this.
Threw it into Edit Ready, converted it, and then threw it into the edit, and it was fine. You know, but it was It was the only thing that I had that would see it.
As long as we're on this topic, and I know that you know what you think I want to say, but what I want to say is I think that if you give Final Cut any ProRes, and this is a feature request, where feature requests, Peter, if you put ProRes in and it is not of the correct ProRes format, it should flag it and let you know, like, hey, this is not a proper ProRes, because some ProRes was coming across, and this is a highly technical piece of business, but that was chunked badly. Yes, rechunking. Oh. And so that's when you see performance problems, and it has to do with how the file is written. And I am not a giant technical person, but
not all ProRes is created equal.
But in any case, Final Cut should flag it if it's not chunked properly, or if it's like what you're talking about. It should take a quick peek and let you know, because you can get into this stuff and you can work with it, and then your project gets bigger and things get slower and you have problems and you have spinning balls and you don't know why, and you have to go back and track it all back, when on ingestion a simple flag would be nice.
The only thing we know for sure is that if that toxic clip gets in there, there's going to be 1,000 people on the internet who are going to watch some guy write, "This program is really slow and just doesn't edit well." And you're going, the real problem was there's some odd little toxic asset in this one guy's file that caused everything to fall apart.
But flagging it, it's the same way as if you go to share and there's some, it won't share. And it'll flag, it'll have a negative large number, which means there's some frame in your project, and you have to switch your timecode display to frames to find that frame of that bad clip. And like you were saying, if that clip were identified ahead of time that there's something funky going on, it would eliminate that detective work.
That'd be nice, actually. Yeah. Who do we talk to? Somebody?
Do you remember Final Cut 7 had that feature? Do you remember? It's called redundant frames. You can analyze it, and it would find frames. There was a command in Final Cut 7 called redundant frames.
Yeah, duplicate frames, I think. So.
Yeah. In any case, it would flag you and say this is going to be a problem with this clip, even italicized it or what have you.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where you don't know until it happens to you.
Right. All right. Who's next?
And you lose a lot
Who's
of
ready?
days of your life.
I'll go.
Mike. All right.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about a couple of pieces of software. One of them is out today, and another one is not out today. But it's kind of out, but not the new version. Anyways, a little bit about visual effects and organization, and if you're dealing with a feature-level visual effects where you're not finishing them in Final Cut, and sometimes you have to send them over to Nuke or send them over to After Effects or whatever. And if you could go to the screen, I built this little effect out of a few still frames, and just as an example of some super high quality work. And you'll notice as it loops what's the burn-ins, and this is actually one. There's a footage and frame counter which exists nowhere. Let me just see if I can zoom in here full frame. Okay, there's a footage and frame counter here in the lower left. I'm going to use the pen. That exists nowhere in the world except for Alex 4D. There's a time code over here, and then there's these nice spoilers, which anytime you work on a studio movie or any kind of movie, they're going to insist on protection. All of this is from one plugin. Thank you. Which is from our good friend Alex Goldner, who just wrote in, and it is called the Alex 4D Feature Overlays, and this is something that he and I sort of, well, I asked for it, he made it. I didn't have anything to do with it being really created, but he figured this out and he put it all together, and I think currently it works in 23.9.8, and the frames are based on 35mm 4perf film, which is pretty standard. Anyway, it's a really cool thing to use if you're outputting reel for sound, if you're outputting visual effects to send to a visual effects person, and in particular with the visual effects, there's another plugin that Alex makes which is Frames, and that's also very handy in respect to this, as well as one thing for visual effects. You always want to make a slate of one frame at the head of any effect shot that you send out, just for reference. And on the last film I worked on, we had 700 and some visual effects, a lot to keep track of. We had databases and hard drives and shipments and shots, frames being pulled and delivered to vendors all over the country for finishing. And we organized it pretty well, but in hindsight, I decided that there was a better way we could have done it, which was to keep a visual effects library, much like this one up here, and make one event for one shot, and which means we would have had 700 events in this visual effects library, but that's okay, because what's inside this event is every element that we may have needed for a particular shot, and this is the monkey shot right here. So here's our rough edit, which is down in the timeline here, and there is one of the shots. There is the other shot, and the reference movie that I made and we would have shipped out to a vendor also comes back in here. So in 6 months, when someone says, well, what were we sent originally? It's all in the package. And the other thing that's sort of a bonus about this, which I didn't realize until after I built this fine piece of work, was you can do something which is pretty standard in the visual effects world, is to make count sheets, which up until now, as far as I know, across the board, Avid, whatever, is a manual process where you say at this frame this happens, and then at this frame another shot comes in, and then at this frame down here something changes again, and then this frame something changes again, and then you're done with the shot. And this is how anyone would build a shot. And in making a count sheet for the artist who's going to finish this piece of work, you would go through and write it down or type it in and say this is the shot name and this is what happens on this frame and this frame and this frame and these are the actions. What I've done here is put some markers here. With this big mouse it's harder to click on the markers. And I've named these markers with layers and sort of a little bit of information about each shot. So layer 3 is the plane, layer 1 is the monkey, layer 2 is the monkey. And you can export this into an XML, a project XML, and open it up in Producer's Best Friend, which is a beta of, thank you, this is a beta that is currently under construction from Intelligent Assistance. And what it does is it will make a spreadsheet of this cut. And it's not entirely in place yet, but what it does is it will tell you, hold on, it will tell you what's going on here with the clip name, where it starts in the timeline. So this is kind of your counts here. And again, this stuff is not fully refined yet, but also the information from the markers. And you can also add notes to this and get all of your visual effects information in one place, including count sheets, which up until now you had to do by hand. And once this is all worked out, it's going to save people a lot of time, especially if you have, like 700 effects on a movie is relatively small for a large movie. And even an independent movie where you have no effects, there's going to be effects because someone says, can we change the color of the sky, or can we clean that face up, or can we do this, or remove this reflection, or whatever. So, and what sort of has helped to make this possible within Producer's Best Friend is the fact where you can now save layouts for all of the metadata that's available. So if you wanted to make something for a visual effect, you could select all the appropriate things and save it. If you wanted to make another one for a code book, which also happens on every movie because all this information needs to get passed on to people who are in marketing and television and airplane edits and whatnot, and just select the information that you need without the stuff like media path and subrole, things like that. And you can share information that's really important and save templates in different ways, and it's super helpful. So that's my big tip for today.
So as a person who's doing that regularly, what is, I guess, in this workflow at this point that's missing, that you'd like to see added? Like, what are there any missing pieces, like after adding some of this stuff in that's in the beta and some of these other things? What do you still want to be able to do?
Well, there's a couple things, like in respect to the count sheets, like it would be great if thumbnails could be fished out of here. That would be helpful. A graphical representation would be nice, but it's enough. Like this is enough right now to get the point across. And also, if you're going to be modifying this file anyway, you can add in more information. It would be nice to. Some of it I think has to be by hand, but 90% of it doesn't have to be by hand, and that's a big time saver.
And is it much different than what the typical workflow is for a lot of, depending on what platform you're on?
Well, it's, as far as I know, and anyone from the Avid world, correct me, please, but it's all by hand. You build an effect, you cobble it together on Avid or Final Cut or whatever, and then you go through and you figure it out, and you write it down, you hand it off to your Nuke guy or your After Effects guy, and they build it. So it doesn't really, as far as I know, it's by hand. That's all I can say.
Very good.
Very cool.
And it's being able to have that as a visual effects artist, being able to get all that information is really, really important, and being able to be able to have it constantly being updated because it's so manual, and because usually someone's just typing it in or paying attention to it, you end up in the situation where it doesn't iterate as fast as the edit. So being able to pump these out, you're making those adjustments while you're working on it, and then I'm able to get that information back because you're going to want that plus or minus 8 frames or 16 frames or whatever.
Right, and if we hand something off to the visual effects, and normally we'll hand stuff off, and then whoever's pulling the frames will say, all right, and I need 8 frame handles or whatever frame handles. So that kind of works into that. And there's other thinking and talking at the same time sometimes doesn't work, but it needs to be refined a little bit. But with any sort of straight effects, this is a great thing because you can break it off into its own timeline. You can put in markers, and you can use the notes. You can even use rolls in there and break it out real easy and hand it off. And because it's one event, one effect, all the versions, all the iterations, any changes of it are also going to live in there.
Right.
And you can get, if you have that event, you can do some refining in there with keywording, like, oh, these are our reference movies, and this is our. You can actually make a PDF of that spreadsheet and bring it back in to the event. It won't take an Excel file, but it will take a PDF. And that way, everything you've ever turned over is there in one spot. Right. Because some of these effects, I've seen version 50, version 60.
Well, and version 50 may come 6 months after. Yeah. It goes back into the pipe. It got reshot because something wasn't right. They sent it back out for whatever.
Right, and keywording by version or whatever, it's a big deal. And to automate that process, because effects always wants count sheets, even if they don't need them.
Right.
Like it's a green screen. Replace the whole green screen, frame to end. We need a count sheet for that. is what the effects will say.
Right.
And so
sometimes because they're paid, someone's paying per frame.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
Exactly.
So anyways, there's some cool stuff and cool possibilities in there, and it's the intelligence assistance thing, and it's Alex's plugin.
That's great.
Which is on his website today.
Excellent. We have a couple questions here. If you have questions, make sure to vote the questions up. We've got a couple of them that people have been voting on, and then also, people have been voting up and down, but you can ask your own questions as well. This one comes from Phil. He said, what's the best way to manage the amount of effects generators themes in Final Cut 10? I have somehow built up hundreds since Final Cut launched, and I wish, hold on a second, I got a little, sorry, I'm having trouble reading my, there we go. I wish I could store them to a library so that only certain effects load in with the library for re-edits. And this is from Phil in Liverpool. So we did. We moved it earlier.
Liverpool,
by the way.
There you go.
Liverpool,
England.
Nice.
Excellent.
We just in case you're wondering, we moved this all the way to 1 o'clock from 6 o'clock just for our European viewers. So we'll and we're gonna look at those logs. So the time's not run out yet. Tell your friends in Europe, because if there's like 3 people watching in London, I don't know.
We're not doing it again.
We might go back at 6 o'clock. You know, so we can drink a lot more beer at 7:30.
That's
At
really
3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Come back to the evening.
Yeah, exactly.
But
so.
that's a great idea. Effects should travel with
library. Absolutely.
with projects or libraries, because I mean, just right here today, I was scrambling to get those Alex's effects on there, which I had on my laptop, onto this system. They should travel with the library, and there should there's a lot of shoulds. They should display in the timeline index as far as what effects were used. It should show up in XML what effects were used in what versions.
You should be able to match frame back from the title transition effect to where it came from in the browser, so you know where that came from.
And like Andres Kiel,
Keel from
Spherical, who built the XFX handler, killer tool for managing effects within an XML file. It'll show you what's in there. So it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist, Philip. Sorry.
Get to work.
We should. Can I escape out of that for a second? Because I just want to show where that stuff actually exists right now. And part of the problem with it is that if I just bring up okay, if I drive here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right now, if you create your own custom titles, transitions, effects, or generators, they're all contained within the movies folder, user, movies, motion templates. This particular one has a couple of custom effects put in here. That's where they have to be when you work, unless you do a symlink from a server. You can kind of set up that it points to it using terminal, but that's where they have to be. So if you want to, what I do, I have a whole separate folder next to motion templates that says basically offline motion templates. And within that folder is the same structure of effects, titles, transitions, and generators. And any ones that I don't want to show up, I manually move into that other folder. The only exception is FX Factory plugins, because you can disable those right within the FX Factory application. But any stuff you build yourself, you have to manually put in here.
I was just going to say, sounds like Event Manager. Philip, can you repurpose that, please?
Yeah.
I'm sure he's probably,
it's already done.
That and fonts. We need to add fonts to that too. So when you bundle up a project, the library being self-contained is fabulous.
Yep.
It needs the effects, the motion templates, and it needs the fonts.
Now the question is whether the application can really do that, because technically you're not supposed to share the fonts.
Yeah, if the license, right? That's true.
That's
license
always
issue
the
with
tricky
that.
part of
More IP
packaging
Yep.
fonts.
Or at least it could say what they are and where they came
Of course,
from.
everybody
or
sees them everywhere.
Yeah,
You know, they're like
helpful for the end
Yeah.
Yeah, which is that calls back to
Completely agree.
having it available in the timeline index. Like it'll say, "Hey, event missing" or "effect missing," and that's it. But it should, if you had it in timeline, you could say, "Show me missing effects, or missing media for that matter."
Or a way
Yes.
to link.
Yes,
But,
that was like a smart collection of missing media, so then I can just see that.
Yes,
And
but if it would show you what effects were used in there, and then you could click and go through, and then you say, "Oh, it's this and this version." Then then you go, if you need them, you go get them.
down.
But it'd be good to know.
Actually, Mark, since I have you here, is there a good way to relink effects?
What do you mean by that?
Not so.
So
if
sometimes
your
don't
effect
have-
is installed,
Yeah.
and it's still showing us offline,
Sometimes it'll happen, yeah. Or even,
there's no relink process. I mean, if you put it in and it's not showing up again, you're going to have to reapply that effect.
Yep.
The only thing I would say is if there was text involved, that text should, if it's a title, and you drag that text and do a replace edit, all the text should remain. You shouldn't have to type it all back in again, but you just got to replace, as far as I know.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because what I've been doing, I just do the replace from start trick, and then
Right.
it'll come back in. But it's not a perfect perfect scenario. And it's also very hard to figure out sometimes what exactly it was that's missing. And if you have multiple effects, how do you know which one in the stack is gone?
Yep.
Clearly, this is an area for great improvement. Just at the end of the pipeline, being able to archive and manage everything. Not only do you want your final project, your events to be bundled up in a managed library, but you would want something of your effects to be part of that.
I try not to use custom effects. Honestly, even though I make custom effects and everything often on a customer job, if I can avoid using custom effects, I generally will for this very reason.
But that
I
ought
don't
not
worry
be
about it. No, it shouldn't.
to
It's
be that
crazy.
way.
But that occurs, I think, in a lot of different applications. I know that when we're working with an external vendor, if they're using After Effects, for instance, I'll tell them, I need you to flatten your effects.
Yeah.
You got to
they got
flatten
some
those to
third-party
layers.
plugin
If you're
to
using
use,
anything outside of that, I don't know if I have your plugin. You know,
Right.
and so I don't want to,
Right.
and I don't want to go spend $2,000 on plugins
Right.
just so that I can open
That's
up
a good point.
my documents.
You got to
So,
bake them in.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
And there's problems in color correction because sometimes you need to round trip back with color corrected footage, and then you know, because I come from the color side, and that can be in many cases a nightmare. Because say you put a glow on something, and like you're going from offline to online, and they put this crazy bloom filter on that shatters the whole thing in the highlights, and then they give you a flattened image. Well, that's what you want, and then you say, well, I can't fix this now.
Right. And I think that there's one of the things that and maybe this exists and someone's going to correct me, but one of the things working with a lot of applications on the Mac, it's not just Final Cut, is that it doesn't completely work with the dynamic linking, like for instance between Premiere and After Effects or Photoshop, but you almost want that on an operating system level where if people use the right, if they use, you almost think, I've been thinking about this for a little bit because I do a lot of, this isn't necessarily Final Cut, but I have to do a lot of presentations, so I have a lot of keynote stuff, and I build tons and tons and tons of diagrams about how a live event's going to occur in OmniGraffle.
Yay, OmniGraffle.
Yeah,
I love that program.
I love that program. Anyway, so and my issue though is that I have to keep on replacing them, and my whole thing is I just want to say this is a dynamic image that's connected to, and both of these are very Mac apps, both Keynote and OmniGraffle, and so what I really want is to say the operating system, if they follow certain rules and packages and so on and so forth in the way that they hold their graphics, when I change it over here, it's going to change over there. In a similar way that you might have a motion, something in motion that would ripple through. I think that figuring out ways for some of these things to be more dynamically set up, so that you're in a larger workflow and applications get better about. And I think that the advantage that Apple has that no one else has is that they have control of the application and the operating system, which they could do. I think they could do more with. So
That might happen if like the programs work together better. Because they don't really.
Right.
I mean, they work great independently, but you don't. There's no send a motion or do the.
Although it's getting
There's
better.
that little
Resolve
open
is
function
really
from inside the
Resolve got
the
speed
tab.
changes working on the round trip, which blew my mind.
We had it to complete. We did a music video where we had her sing everything 75% speed because we wanted this nice slow, and it was a whole Blackmagic Resolve thing, and that kind of made it difficult because all our speed changes got lost when we sent it all to Resolve.
And it's been fixed.
Yeah.
Resolve 11.
We should have waited a year.
It's been a problem forever. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that, and the only problem though is that if you do round trip, your effects are going to get reset in many cases back to 0, which brings up the same concept on the round trip. It's anyway.
very good. All right. Who's our next?
I think I'm
our
going
next
to jump in
victim?
here next. I
You
gotta
were
launch a
all
couple of-
organized. You had it all
I
set
know,
up.
and I
ready to
messed
go,
up.
that's all
and
right.
we
It's
just
testing.
moved
You're the
into
new guy,
whole
and you gotta
thing.
be,
All right.
I'm just going to do this. I'm going to see if there's Keynote and it's the same version launched. If not, I have them as regular slides. Yeah, we can do that. So good. I'm going to come back here. And basically what I wanted to talk about, I mean, we've been doing a lot of what I would consider relatively high-end stuff, and I want to do something for the folks who just, have these basic things, although this particular aspect of what I'm going to talk about is something that Peter Wiggins was showing on Final Cut Pro fcp.co, which is a great site for all sorts of Final Cut Pro 10 things. And basically, this is about keywording. This is about how you structure keywords to get certain things to happen, how you can move around your order of keywords quickly and easily, and just what is a good keyword. When I was starting to learn this stuff, I realized that there is no training for how to set up what I think the database people call a taxonomy. It's just a structured work list of how do you name stuff. And a lot of people that I've found as I've looked over their shoulder at Final Cut Pro 10 things really don't have very much clue as to how you can really affect your efficiency by doing these kind of things. And I'm going to zoom into Peter Wiggins' piece. This is something he did for the Tour de France coverage that was on ITV4. And thank you, Peter. I appreciate you giving me permission to show this stuff. And if we zoom into this, this top library has a very difficult to understand technical term for what it is. It's got all this big string of gobbledygook. And we see this in tags a lot. I mean, if I look at this, I can kind of see that this is edit 1. I don't understand what the TDF14 is. At the end of that, it looks like a date. But I've actually come to kind of think about these things as either covert or overt tags. And this is something that I think about when I actually make up the names for things that I do in my Final Cut 10 events, in the keyword collections, and you do them with some intent, you can really make things a lot easier. That to me is a covert tag. That's not going to translate to somebody. But look what he's done down here at the bottom. This is about as overt as it gets. It's real clear, real easy to understand. He's working on the Tour de France. We all intuitively know that that covers a lot of years. He probably had some archival footage here. So bingo. It's got an event name, 3005 yearly archive. I understand inside of that he's used the 1980s, and inside that all of his events are enabled clearly by year. So it's real quick, it's really overt.
All his keyword collections?
All his keyword collections, no matter who's working with this database, they can instantly get what he's talking about. Now, there are a whole bunch of things that you can do to move these things around if you want to have an efficient database system in your things. And for example, what he's done up here is he's used a series of leading numbers to force a sort order in his collections. By simply using 000001002, that's going to cause the finder aspects of this database to put things in the order that you want, and it's going to trump the alphabetical order of what he would have usually had. And so understanding this, I look at this from the outside and I don't know how he set this up, but I know a few things by just looking at these tags. I know that, for example, he's used 3 characters. Why? Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is that he had thought that his database was probably going to be between 100 and 1,000 things, because a 3-digit sort pre-tag allows you to have 1,000 categories from 000 to 999. If he'd wanted more than that, if he had something really complex, he could have used a 4th digit. Or conversely, if he wanted something simpler, he could have just used 2 digits, and that'll give him 100 sort potentials. So as you're creating your tags, these are the kind of things you can think about in order to push things around and make them work the way you kind of want them to. And it's just worth spending some time, I think, to sit down before you design your database, whatever your database is going to look like, and try to figure out, is there a strategy I can use? Is there some way to make sense out of how much data I have? How complex is it? And what are things that I can do so I make it easier for the next person? There are a lot of 10 editors who are individuals. You edit your own stuff, and the sky's the limit. Make your tags however you want. If you want to use the names of your cats, use the names of your cats, that's fine. If you're going to have a huge system like you guys work in, where there's gigantic standards, you've got tons of collaborators, you really have to get together and figure out how you're going to tag things so it makes sense for a group. In the middle, there's that huge group of people who can use this kind of technique to simply do interesting sorts, so you don't have to scroll up and down on long lists all the time and waste time trying to find things. And I got interested in this stuff because I had this really terrible experience. Let me get out of here. I want to get back to Command Tab.
Just escape.
Escape, I tried that, I thought. Oh, there we go, good, thanks. Let's close this down. I had this great project that I did a while back. We were trying to figure out how to do multicam when 10.0.3 came out, or 10.03. And we suddenly had all these cameras available. We had 16 cameras available in the switcher, and I wanted to try it and see, does 10 lag, or does it actually, can it handle 16 cameras quickly? So we mounted this Jazz process, and I made a series of horrible mistakes in my tagging. I'm going to reveal them and talk about what I did so terribly wrong so that other people don't do that. And one of the things I did over here, if you look at my library, I'm going to open up this event, and I'm going to go through all of these. I started, okay, so quick overview. We had 14 cameras, DSLRs and GoPros. We have all this complexity, and I thought to myself, wow, we did 4 song recordings. Song 1, we did take 1 and take 2. Song 2, we did take 1 and take 2. 14 cameras. Suddenly we got 56 cameras to manage through keywords. And I'm thinking, how do I make sense out of this? Do I go in and when the sax player's playing, tag all those with the word sax? Do I do that for the drummer? I was looking at days and days and days of tagging, and I realized that I was being an absolute idiot because it's multicam. What I really needed was just 4 tags. I needed, out of all those 56 clips, to understand what came out of song 1, take 1, what came out of song 1, take 2, what came out of song 2, take 1 and take 2, because at that, just having that information would allow me to bucket everything and prepare it for multicam, so that in the visual switcher, I was able to make the decision about whether the sax player is playing or not on the fly, switch to it when he's playing, and switch away from it when he's not playing. So I learned really quickly to get in there and just try to find a simple way to do things. Also, it's very important, I want to give you a couple of quick little techniques for those of you who are running into very complex lists and you're having frustration because maybe a tag that you're going to a lot is at the bottom. You can use very simple characters like spaces or things like that. If I wanted to get down here to this wide shots, wide title shots, and I wanted to just temporarily move it up to the top of my list, all I have to do is put some character that sorts higher in front of it. So I'm just going to stick a space in front of it. Bingo. When I go back up now, if I'm working constantly at the top of the list, wide title shots pop up to the top. If you want to do more than one category forced to the top, you can use things like a dash. A simple hyphen will sort below a space, but above all of your alphanumeric characters. And so I now think about this kind of thing when I'm designing a strategy for tagging things. What kind of alphanumeric tags can I place on my assets so that when I come to this, it's more organized, it's easier, I can communicate to editors who may have to come after me. For that big group of like corporate editors, if you're working on a project and you're heading on a big project for the CEO and maybe you're out sick that week, somebody's going to have to come in and make sense out of this. So the more overt and understandable for the largest number of people you can make your tags, I think that's a good practice. So that's my tip. Use all these little techniques to try to make these things work better for yourself.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, go for it.
So, I see you use folders, a lot of folders in here. Why do you choose folders instead of tags? Like you could tag all those shots with GoPro, for example.
Yeah, and folders are nice organizational things. I mean, it's kind of like events in that people have to figure out these concepts. We know now that we have the library since 10.03 or 10.1. And so the library becomes kind of like a bucket to keep things in. Inside of that, there's a lot of talk in the communities that I hang out on online. Like, when should I make it an event? When should I use a folder? How should I bucket things? And it's a system that no one can tell you really how to tag things. I mean, I have to watch out because these are the ways I do things, but somebody with a different kind of practice might do them entirely differently. You were talking earlier about feature film practice, and I was thinking while you were saying that, yeah, but the documentarians may have tons of time. If they're working on a documentary that's going to last 3 years, a slower system for going through and tagging tons of footage very specifically might be a really effective strategy for them. They just want to live with their footage, get really granular with it, and tag the heck out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I like the ideas of folders inside libraries. I don't like the idea of folders inside events.
Let's talk about it. Why?
Well, folders inside libraries don't exist. If I had 100 scenes in a movie,
right,
I would like to be able to say, all right, well, let's put scenes 1 through 20 in a folder, and like events 1 through 20 in a folder, because I like to do one event for one.
You basically want to collapse your events.
Yeah. And I guess inside, when I look at like folders, like if I click on this let me see, NASJazz. If I click on the NASJazz project, that is hard to see. Hard to say, sorry.
Jazz at the Nash was the technical name.
I see the contents of the folder inside that at the top level, right?
Right.
And then if I click on the folder, I see just that. I guess at this level, I just don't see the difference between keywording them as that or foldering them as that.
It's just another abstraction layer of organization that any editor can choose to use the way they see it being used.
Okay.
You can do this. I know a lot of people, I have a friend up in the St. Louis area, and he's a news shooter predominantly, but he showed me in one of our online things this amazing system he has for working on his documentary, and he used folders, he used actually events in a way entirely different than I did. Each one of his interviewees he had a separate event for, and he would put everything having to do with that, go out and interview this interviewee in that event. So he structured by interview subject events. I'd never even thought about doing that.
And for a documentary style, it's very different. So for instance, we did this EPK with thousands of clips and all this stuff, and the question is, how are you going to want to search for information? Because in a feature film, you're dealing with scenes and some of these other things, but in many cases, you're going to want to search based on the person, you're going to want to search based on the location, and you're going to want to search based on the type of shot, or whether it's a B-roll or an interview. So you may have 4 different ways. So you may want to filter down, like if you have DSLR here, that might be your location, you know, and then you have your keywords filtering down according to the people, and they're slotted that way, so you can open and close it based on what you're looking for within an event. But what I'd really love to see that's not there yet, I'm hoping at some point they'll get to this, is library-based keywords, because I don't really want the keywords to be event-specific in many cases. I want them to be across an entire library. So, because for instance, if you're doing stock footage or something like that, you have so many different things and times that you're doing this. I want to be able to search in a bin-based scenario, which is what an event is, but also I want it to be like my Finder, where I can either go by tag or by folder.
I like to tag. I over tag, I think, because you can't. Like, so for a shoot like this, I would tag by camera. I would tag by what it was shot, like who the camera was trained on, if anybody, whether take 1 or take 2, what song, because then, and the reason I like the folders where you can organize and group things together, but if I had that as tags instead of folders, it's so easy to build smart collections. So show me all the GoPro shots on day 1 that were the lead singer. So I can just look at those because I need to really pull out the certain GoPro shot. The fact that you can have a single clip tagged with multiple sets of metadata and create collections where that clip might fall into that collection because it meets our criteria. So a clip doesn't have to go into one bin. A clip can exist in multiple collections to me is the biggest thing about this, and just makes it so easy to find.
But there's just so many different ways to slice and dice. One of the things about 10 that I think is both an incredible blessing, but it's also difficult when we're trying to explain this to people who don't edit with the program. You know, I've known people who just literally import things, don't touch anything, and just throw string outs on a timeline, and they do all their editing in a storyline, and you're missing the whole event browser, and it's amazing. But they don't have a strategy. They don't even understand how it works, so it's hard to convince them of the incredible value of having it because they've never used it.
And if you are using a lot of keywords, here's actually something that you may want to look into doing if you're working off a second monitor. And Apple, if you are watching this, this is a huge pet peeve of mine. This little filter thing is not resizable for some reason.
You got to look into the camera when you say that.
That's Apple
with
right
a threatening eye. In fact, you
Number 3.
should just have Mike do it because he's scary looking.
It's the skateboard injury.
But one thing that you can do is you can keep this little filter open at all times, and you can just keep this on the side on a second monitor.
Great idea.
Yep.
Great idea.
Great.
With, you know, I want to see anything that's got this thing here, but then is also, and then you can be selecting and deselecting as a way to search down across your tags, you know, whether it's, and it gives you so much flexibility because you can, you know, just, jazz and a kick, there's nothing there, but I don't know.
Can you make that bigger, Sam?
Yeah. That was about when I realized I didn't
Here
need
you
to
go,
break
here
it
you go.
down that far.
Now it's bigger.
So the whole bummer with this, obviously, is that, you know, I have to scroll with this, which is annoying. I should be able to just have this stretched out, and literally it would be like having your events on a second display,
it's
except
beautiful.
it's on the side. So
Live update.
You could be. We'll try. Oh, I got one there. So I'd have, you know. And then what about those on a Tuesday? And then, you know, so like you can use that and quickly filter what you want to see based on tag.
That's great.
As long as we're talking about pet peeves about HUDs,
Yeah.
I don't know why this should be another thing that pops out or is collapsible, and so should the whatchamacallit here.
Background tasks.
The background tasks. Why I don't like that they're HUDs. I want them to just like drop down from here and then go back away. I don't know.
So
Maybe
one
that's just
positive thing is that, just a little tip, if you've created smart collections or keyword collections that are applicable to more than one event, I often create a smart collection that shows me all just audio clips or all graphics.
Right.
You can just drag those to other events and they will filter that event the minute you drop them in there. So you don't need to create them over and over again. So I create a set of them and I have basically a special dummy library of those keyword and smart collections. And then I can just drag them onto other libraries and other events. And you don't have to create them, because I just found myself creating the same smart collections over and over again.
Question. This is from Brian Ziner, I believe, or Zwiner. And he asks, do you guys see a future where Final Cut would be in high demand in the network television industry? And if so, what can we do as users to help move the industry forward? And he's from Studio City. Tell people, use it, do great things.
Yes,
I think
and
that's
you
the
should,
answer.
I mean, my big tip is, you should really take a look at what Softron has and mixing that in with Final Cut 10. Basically, the amount of streams that you can import, you know, just coming in at kind of, in a lot of cases, you can replace the EVS system a little bit. And in terms of turnaround time, it's just ridiculously faster because you're working from camera originals. So
it is working its way into some of those big things. There was just a story the past couple of days ago about NBC using it for some of, and I don't know which facility it was, but using it in sports programming. And sports is one of the things where you think this would be brilliant. And in fact, there were even early stories in the early days of Final Cut about people at the higher level of sports thinking, wow, this is really cool. If I have player 24 in football or whatever that has a numbered player, you just kick in 24 and all of his clips show up. That's pretty amazing for somebody doing highlights reel work and stuff like this.
Well, I think we talked about it last month. I was talking to some folks that were doing a huge sporting event overseas, and you know, they just said there was just no way to go faster than Final Cut when you had to do fast turns. You know, I'm going to get a bunch of stuff from a live event. I got to put it up in a couple hours and have it on YouTube.
Right.
When it comes to that super fast, you know, turn, the fact that you can get everything in, you can organize it quickly, be editing very quickly. You know, I think that's a compelling thing. Like, I always think that this is the perfect thing for news. Yeah. You know, like for people shooting, you know, especially when you're talking about in small markets, and you're talking about predators who are going out. You know, sure. these folks, and because I mean, I've seen ones now. I was in Tucson a couple of weeks ago, and the funny thing was they had, it was obvious that the guy had set the camera down and then ran out and recorded his hit, you know, and like recorded the whole thing and then ran back and like closed it up. There was like nobody else there. It was like, but like, and for smaller markets, that's really become, you know, these guys have to be able to do this. And so you almost see the ability for them to start an iMovie and learn how to do it there, and then very seamlessly move up to something else, but be able to just hack this stuff together really quickly and have it ready for the nightly news.
Well, and even then, I think some people, like you guys had this on MacBreak Studio, where you're just editing right off your SSD that comes from the camera in some cases, right? Where that'll just mount right up, and then you're just working right from there.
Well, you have to, right now, to import off an SSD, you have to copy it to a drive. It won't let you, when you do an import, if it's directly, it depends, because if it's directly like a GoPro, sometimes it'll let you say, hey, leave it there, which it shouldn't, you know, because you don't want that to happen. But depending on whether it's connected to a card reader or it's in the camera, I've had instances where it will allow me to import and leave in place, which you know, this is one of these safeguard things you're talking about earlier, where the Apple controls, because they didn't want you to do that and have the mistake.
But you'd still be able to work it on the import.
Oh, you can still.
Where it's going to come in the library,
you can still edit while it's
specify,
copying. Absolutely, while it's copying, you're editing live. Yeah.
And the other thing is that if you're, especially when you're trying to do these fast turns, so all of our machines that we take in the field are all SSD-driven machines. I mean, there's no spinning hard drives on in any of the machines that we take in the field. And almost everything we record to is SSD. So we have SSDs for our, whether it's the Blackmagic or the Pix 240s or whatever. You know, all of that stuff is going to be, and moving literally 100 gigs from one SSD to another over Thunderbolt is 5 minutes.
At NAB, I actually was shooting stories on my iPhone and coming back to the press room and just attaching that to the laptop and cut and Final Cut and straight up to the website. I was there for dvinfo.net, and we were all pushing in all sorts of stories, and they were all going up to the net. There was an operation there from somewhere. I didn't know who they were, but they had like 10 edit systems, and they were doing almost live coverage from NAB right up to the cloud in real time.
And with the new Mac Pro, you have the 3 Thunderbolt buses on there, so you can have your primary storage on the second bus and your SSDs as you're importing coming in there, so you can be editing with all of your other stuff while this other stuff is coming in on a completely separate bus, and not really see any performance, issues.
But what people are running into now, you see this, is they don't realize it's so fast and easy. They're importing, they're cutting. They don't realize the copying is still happening in the background off their camera card. And they're finishing their edit, they're exporting, they're shutting down, right? And then they launch up again. They're like, wait, why is my media offline? Because they were able to cut their whole program before the import ever finished.
That's right.
And they quit, and the import never finished. And it's like, well, it's still on the card, and you just connected the camera. I mean, it's so transparent now that you don't even notice what's happening in the background. It used to be import, go away, and wait.
Right, go have lunch, have a cup of coffee.
And now your whole project is sometimes finished before the import's even done.
Right.
Brave
New world.
It is.
All right.
Oh, I guess
Sam.
it's my turn. All right. So somebody mentioned earlier, and actually I don't want to mess with your.
No, you can close it out.
Okay.
You got here. You
Well,
with the mouse.
or if there's, I just need some footage with some sound on it. Doesn't matter what it is. So I'll just
sound on it. Anybody
we'll call
works?
this.
Oh, this was shot MOS actually. The audio tracks are
I was
all
just
off
gonna make a
into
new
a separate
project
sound
here.
mix.
Oh, okay. So we have anything that's got
Yeah, there's no. I'll show you. There's other libraries. Just look. Close that whole library.
underwater?
Yeah, that one's
got it.
that's
All right.
let's see if that gets. I think that
All right, so we'll just make a new project here. We'll call this trimming. And something that on that podcast that
I'm sure it has audio. Yeah.
the FCPX Scroll podcast that was talking about with the Avid editor, who's talking about something called dynamic trimming, where basically, you know, and I'm not an Avid guy, so also feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. But basically, the advantage was that you'd theoretically be able to go and as you're working and editing, you know, you can be trimming on the fly with your JKL keys and some of those things and do that really quickly. So I was like, there's got to be a way to do that in Final Cut, and actually, like, it turns out there really is. It's really not a big deal. In fact, they don't even bother to list it as a feature because it's just a simple combination of a couple other features. So essentially, in case you guys were wondering, any Avid editors out there who want to, you know, who are curious how to get their dynamic trimming into Final Cut, it's slightly different, but you know, the fundamental concept is the same. And a lot of people don't know about these keys, but there's the, what is it, the bracket keys and the, is there a forward slash or backslash?
Forward slash.
And the forward slash. So,
Trim 2.
okay, so let's go and quickly find two clips where we're not going to have stuff at the end here. This is
Need some media there, huh?
Need some tail and head.
Yeah, so we'll just trim these a little bit here. And basically we'll just use this edit. So, you know, I can select both edges, left edge, right edge.
Can you tell people what you're doing to do that?
Oh, so there's the left bracket is going to give me the edge of the outgoing clip. The right bracket is going to give me the edge of the incoming clip. And then the forward slash is going to give me both edges.
Do you mind if I zoom in a little bit?
And I got to get, see, I'm not real good with the Telestrator.
Oh, there you go.
So if we go, so that's the left bracket, that's the right bracket, and that's both.
How'd you do both?
The forward slash.
Okay.
So basically the other thing, and how do we zoom out here?
Oh, sorry.
Command minus.
Oh, which one?
Command Option plus or minus.
Okay. So if we go up here, and the one thing we just want to check, I think it's under the modify menu, or is that on the clip menu? Where is the loop? It's under playback.
Yes.
So under view, you go in under loop playback. You need to have this selected in order to see the same range. And you can specify how long this takes if you go under preferences and go under editing, and there's the pre and post roll duration, which is under
Playback.
Oh, that's right, playback, which is here. So right now it's 2 seconds before and 2 seconds after that's going to go through. So that would be your, you know, I guess dynamic trimming
By the way,
duration.
I'm so glad they adjust those defaults, because those default used to be 5-second pre-roll in like Legacy Final Cut, and you always went in and manually changed it. It's very nice to see that.
So you can basically adjust these as you would, and so with the, I guess this would basically be a roll edit, and all you're going to do is if you push Shift and backslash, it's gonna start a recurring loop playback. And now there's a few different ways to work with this once you've got it going. So for instance, I can use the nudge left and nudge right keys to move it back. It's going to continue to edit as I update. So that's one way to do it. I can do +5 period, and that's going to move me 5 seconds forward, and I'm still going through my selection. I can do -5 period, go back. I can also do Shift X, and that's going to take me to wherever that edit was.
That's the cool thing, because you're watching it and you're like, I want it to cut there, right?
So you're going to hold down Shift X, and I want the cut to happen right here.
That's
So
awesome.
now we're right there.
That's cool.
So the other thing is this also, and not a lot of people know this, but if you do Control S or double click, you can open these up, and you can do the same thing with audio edges by using Shift and these keys. So I can do audio edges the same way, holding Shift left bracket, Shift right bracket, and shift there, and now I'm just going to do shift / and now I'm dynamic trimming with audio. So there we go.
And you're doing roll edits there, but you could trim. You could do
but I can
ripples
trim,
just as well.
left to right edge as well. So I can do plus 3 seconds there, and now we're going right in there. So dynamic trimming in Final Cut 10.
That's awesome.
Sweet.
Next question here. We're going to cut through a couple questions here really quickly. We have from Chris Northcross. He says, what is your selection on why Final Cut 10, or what is your speculation on why Final Cut 10 round tripping hasn't been implemented, and do you think it will eventually happen?
Round tripping to what?
To what? Where?
Missing motion?
I'm guessing
I
motion,
guess.
yeah, because that question will come up. It comes up every month, and will
Yeah,
keep
yeah,
coming up every month until it is there.
The answer is we don't know.
You don't know.
It's complicated.
We suspect it's complicated.
Okay. Next one is Massimiliano. I think I said that right. Massimiliano Sabini. He said hello from. I hope I said that right. He said hello from Italy. Can you explain why you cannot do a search for your keywords? I just finished editing a documentary that contained 350 keywords in 35 hours of material.
Wow.
Let's say that again.
Can't search for your keywords?
Search for your keywords?
That's what he said.
It might be he might be searching from the wrong event, possibly.
But you should be able to do it.
You should be able to, yeah. But if
Okay.
he's depending on where, if you, oh wait, no, but you wouldn't be able to search from the bar up there.
Maybe that's what he means, up at the top at the search field.
He would have to search based on what I did with the. So one
Yeah.
thing you should try for your keywords is to go up and hit the plus button and select keyword here. So you open this little filter with that magnifying glass, and then keywords, and make sure you go to include. Who's got the mouse there?
I do, sorry. There's no keywords for this event, so I would probably use
Oh.
Bill's.
His
That's why
would
you're
go
not
to
seeing
his,
any
yeah.
keywords there. So
Right.
I would use Bill's event.
That
Those.
makes a lot more sense.
There you go.
There
yeah,
we go.
use one. There you go.
Okay, so yeah, basically what you might want to try is to come in here and maybe I'll just start from scratch with that and go plus and add the keywords, and then the key is to include all and go to uncheck all. And now you should be able to bring and search by whatever keywords are in the event.
Fabulous.
Well, but
You're going to have a long scrolling list.
you can
of
have
like
a, you can have a
350.
list of the keywords, but you can't search the keywords. Like you couldn't say. You can see what they all are. This is the place to do it, but the like
But you can't type.
But
and
you
search.
can't say or could you say? Let's just exclude that. Uncheck all. I mean, I don't think you could say you could look. You can't look for keywords like via text, right? As far
No,
as-
click into the keyword collection up the magnifying glass and type in kick and see if it doesn't just pull out the clip that says kick. Not there, but all the way up in the. Yeah.
Well, if you do, let's just.
I don't think.
Yeah,
I think it's one or the other. Well, you have to close this in order to.
yeah.
Yeah, close that.
So, but in here.
Just put a
and-
cursor in there. Oh,
You need to,
you
you
wanna
want to
clear
clear it
out
out. The little X there and X at the top on the search field to the right.
Okay. So
There you go.
kick.
kick, and there's.
Well, those aren't
No,
Those
that's
are
from
in
the name,
file.
though.
Those are
That's
files.
Oh, the
files,
file's
their
not the-
file name. It's not going to search.
Right.
the
Wait,
keywords.
the only thing I have in here that has the word kick appended to it is ranges from the shots.
Well, it's in the
kick
it's
drum
in the name
sound.
of the clip.
It's
here,
in the
though.
name of the clip. That's
Yeah.
where it's finding it. So
Oh,
if
okay.
you like, and here's where it falls short a little bit.
Favorites are searchable though.
Favorites are searchable. Yeah.
Yeah.
See me trying to drag that corner. So yeah, and right now, like this is showing the text kick includes a text kick amongst all these keywords, and that's what it's coming up with. So they're not searchable, but you can see a list of them here.
Well, you can search, but you'd have to select.
Right.
So,
So the answer is it's a feature request.
There you go.
There you
Yeah, it's a good
You
one.
should be able to search those.
Yeah, that actually makes sense.
We had one from
I see something.
T. Payton who said, Sam,
AT.
he said, you don't have to expand first, just shift bracket to open the audio and adjust.
Oh, really?
Here's
There we go. Thanks, T. All right. Is that true?
Before we go
How does
any
it
further about the keyword, here's another little thing that if you're in list view like I am now, and I select all, Command A, and then Option right arrow, I could spill open everything and see all my keywords.
Oh, all the keywords, the
all are
zillions
right
of
there under the
keywords.
clip. So I can if I'm in list view, this is just another way
Yep.
to look at keywords.
Close to searching.
It's not really searching, but
It's better.
Oh, it's searching.
no,
It's just not searching very well. Yeah, exactly. All right. So and so did you try that with? I guess you didn't have the mouse with this. You don't have to expand first. Just shift bracket.
Yeah, let's see.
Go
Well,
to
how
a
would you
different-
know
go to a
which,
different
if you're
clip.
doing an audio edit? Well, maybe, I'm sure it does work. I just, let's see. So if you go, and so if it's shift, left bracket, oh my God. Huh.
Pops open an image view.
There we go. All right, thanks, T.
This is the best. This is the best part of the live interaction. People are like,
Discovery.
We have a panel of experts who are wrong.
We have a panel of
Thanks,
experts
everybody else can
worldwide.
experts here.
Worldwide.
That's
It's a
the problem.
worldwide.
it is a global user group.
Exactly. This is for all of us. This is another. This is another one from Martin Bohr. He said, "Oh, by the way, thanks for making the show, and answering the questions. Really appreciate it. Keep up the good work." And
Let's
next,
talk about that for a second.
Yeah. Let's talk. Let's ponder that. I'm going to jump to now. I know Alex and Chris have some other questions, but I'm going to jump down to someone new, Mika Blazer, and who is in Amsterdam. No, why are you not at IBC?
IBC,
He said, I am working with a lot of footage with a single external library, around 12 terabytes on a Pegasus. Final Cut 10 is now getting sluggish. Restarting and deleting preferences isn't working anymore. Well, that's bad. What's the maximum terabytes a library can have?
The stuff is external media?
Yes.
Just external
How many
array.
sequences? I think if there's a lot of sequences, that's probably slowing you down more than anything else.
Well, there's some unknowns like, do we have a bunch of compound clips inside of compound clips inside of? I mean,
Right.
I have a client that has compound clips as angles inside a multi-clip.
Right.
That could it could really have an effect on performance.
Yeah, those are sequences.
Also,
they're sequences
yes,
at the
yeah.
heart. And
It can be plugin based as well. So depending on what kind of plugins you've got going on in a sequence, there might be something funky happening. And
or the media could be chunked
because
badly.
yeah, there's been. I mean, we've done 50. You can do 50, 100 terabytes. It doesn't matter. The question is how much is going on within that terabytes, and are there any things that
You
are
said 12 terabytes of media.
12 terabytes on a Pegasus.
So the question would be, how big a Pegasus? I mean, how full is the Pegasus? If
Right,
that thing's
be
80%,
if you're getting
90%
close to
full.
the outer edge of the
Right.
Pegasus. I mean,
Yeah.
typically once you go over 70%, you're going to start seeing
That's a
degradation.
really, really good point.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
right.
That's very
So,
good.
yep, that could be a big part of why she's
Time to
having
buy
big
more
spells.
drives.
Very good. The next question here is from Lee Herbert, and he said, what features in Premiere, DaVinci, and Avid would you like to see brought to Final Cut 10?
I can speak to Avid.
Uh-huh.
The blue arrow, where you can park your cursor at a particular frame and then fill out in both directions. Like you park on the source and the record on a particular frame, and then it fills out the cut.
So instead of replace from start or replace from end, you want replace from playhead.
Yep.
And
It
that was
fills-
in
yeah.
Final Cut 7.
It had it in
Yes,
7.
yes.
Kind of.
Yeah,
it
it
wasn't great in Final Cut 7, but it was there.
It's a little thing for me. I customize the interface a lot. Command Control 1. I do this a lot, where I just do progressive. I just hide the stuff I'm not working with, and depending if I'm working with the ScreenFlow or I'll readjust these. I would like the ability to be able to save that as a layout right there.
Layouts.
Yeah.
I mean, that's in Premiere. That was in 7. I really miss the ability to bring that interface back exactly like that.
Yeah, and a floor-to-ceiling event
something
library, which could go all the way from the top of the screen to the bottom of the screen,
Yes.
instead of stopping at
You mean
the
like the
timeline.
tilde key does in After Effects and Premiere?
I don't know how to use either one of those
Oh, sorry.
programs. But
Tilde, yeah.
yeah,
Tilde,
basically,
yeah.
so you have more vertical room for your library, because you don't need the entire screen for the timeline.
That's true.
or your timeline on a second monitor. where everything is.
It's a limited thing where you can throw over the event browser, or you can throw over the monitor screen. I do a lot with my laptop with a second USB-driven screen over there, and so there's a limited amount of things you can put over
So
there.
screen layouts, I think, is the boil down of this,
yet.
of that request, right?
I'd love to see curves, color correction.
Fabulous.
There's your Da Vinci.
I like to see curves everywhere. Function curves in general are something that belong in every application. We, at a company I used to work at. What?
For animation, proper curves,
function curves. There was the best function curves I've ever seen were made in I don't know when they were made, but I saw them in 1997, and no one's ever matched them. There was a place that I used to work that had that worked with a lot of applications, and instead of trying to build function curves into all of the different applications, they actually just built a application that was function curve. So it was just curves, and you would literally bring your animation in, and then you'd sit there and you could see the result, but you could sit there and play with it. And what was great about it is that it did a couple different things. One is that it was really easy to grab onto stuff and move it around. That's fluidity of function curves is super important. But when you were adjusting your function curve, it gave you a representation of the velocity and the acceleration of your function curve. And so what would happen is that these two. So velocity is basically a derivative of your positional data, and acceleration is the derivative of the velocity. And if you're wondering what the derivative of acceleration is, it's a jerk. That's actually what there's a lot of jerks at the center of a lot of acceleration. But the thing is with the function curve, they scaled them. Instead of trying to make it accurate, you had the velocity and acceleration sitting just full screen right below it. And what you were able to do is see any kind of little hitch. Because what happens is if you see breaks in the velocity or breaks in the acceleration curves, you know that that animation is going to pop just a little bit, or it's going to do something funky. And by having that representation while you're adjusting your function curve, you really were able to create super smooth animations in a way that
Motion has that built into it.
Yeah, but it's it does.
That's
it
all.
does.
That's all.
Yeah.
I have a couple
But
more.
when the picture with your zoom goes like that, if you could just see there it is in the curve, fix the curve, and it's done.
That's right. If you want to see that, because you didn't have to even look up, you didn't have to hit play. You could sit there and you could just see that. You could see where all these little hits are going to be in a way that just lets you fix it. And there's been people who've tried to do it, and mostly because I asked them for it.
Cinema 4D is pretty good.
Cinema 4D has gotten much better.
Yeah. I have two more things to answer that same question. Avid and Final Cut 7 have a little area. Can you show the screen? A little area like below the picture where you could sort of represents the length of the sequence. Thank you. And you can click here, click here, click here, click here, and it would sort of jump across the sequence. You can grab and hold and scroll across the sequence. Basically, skimming on this monitor would be nice. And I think, what I've asked for, please, Apple, is a key combination that you can hold down and then drag the mouse across this and have it skim.
Skim right on it.
Because
you're kind of close with Shift Z to just make the timeline fit the screen, and then you can click down on the timeline.
Well, kind of, but if you're zoomed in on something, you don't want to do it. I mean, the idea of skimming in there is nice, and I got so into that I forgot what the other one was.
Timeline markers is a big one. I'd love to see markers actually in the ruler of the timeline and not just on a clip. And also Resolve's marker system is pretty amazing. You can color code them and be tagged. They can be renamed.
Yeah.
I'd love to be able to drag a marker up. In Final Cut 7, you can like command drag a marker or move it around. Markers are tremendously useful in editorial. And there's just limited marker functionality in Final Cut 10. I want more better markers.
There's some stuff that's cool in there, but it is like, why can't you color code things?
So you know what Richard Taylor right now is either writing down where he's already listed all these in his list, like already covered, or he's adding them to the list right now.
Do we touch scrolling playhead?
And does that shout out to Washington, D.C. and Richard, the keeper of all things needed.
Does anybody know why, like, it's, what is it, QWE are represented up there on in the middle bar, the gray bar in the middle? Like,
what?
Oh, let me do something.
Right,
okay, so right here. All right, so
Why are they represented there?
well, no, they're represented there, but why is there not the D key, the overwrite
yeah.
key, there as well?
Well, I'll take a stab at answering that. In this new modality of primary storyline,
wanna hurt anything?
connected clips, overwrite edits are less useful now. I mean, Q, it's essentially an override, except it's doing it on top of it. But an override is much more destructive in terms of what's being overwritten in the timeline, where a Q edit doesn't. Plus, connect edits are much more, social media and being connected.
I'm connected.
So that's my guess.
That was a
is
good
that they
explanation,
were,
Steve.
There's
Bravo.
just some things you can't do with a connected clip that you can do with a one in the main timeline. So
I'm not saying that overrides aren't useful. It's just they're probably less.
it's advanced.
It looks like a subtle indication that Apple thinks the override's not so useful in this.
Okay.
You're shaking your head. You're going, yeah.
Like to decide for myself.
When you get it in, you can just command option down arrow and then just override it right to the timeline.
I kind of agree with Steve that there's a function of magnetism. When you get seriously working with magnetism, I think some of those things that were important when you had fixed tracks just are less important. They're not
That might
important.
be the case, but why not just put the 4th edit there? You have 3 edit buttons. There's 4 types of edits.
Because then you have to add something over here to make it symmetrical, and so all of a sudden you're looking toward the center.
It's all about optics and
Oh,
an extra button.
I
would-
remember the
Yeah,
other thing.
it's
Clicking,
not-
I want to be able to click on a viewer, whether it's the single viewer or if I have 2 viewers up, and do key numerical entry and have it start to do to enter time code, like where I want to go. Like if I want to go,
Oh, you can.
oh well, with 2 clicks you can, but I want to be able to click on the viewer and then start typing.
Oh.
Instead of clicking on the viewer and then clicking here
first.
Well, you can
and starting to type.
Or you can
just
do like
clicking
Control
over-
P though.
You can hit
Control
Control
P
P.
will and type it in.
Yeah, well, if I have my hand on the mouse. They were saying, "What do you want from Avid?" I want that from Avid.
Okay.
All right, next, our next one is from Chris Northcross and in Pontiac, Michigan. He said, as an addendum to the conversation about tagging, how do you or do you incorporate smart folders in your organizing strategy?
Smart folders.
Smart collections.
Smart collections, probably.
4 minimum always, which is multicam, compound, synchronized, and projects.
Yeah.
No, I do audio only stills.
I do
Video.
and I do one on used and unused clips.
Used
I mean, I don't want to know which ones
Used
I
and
used. Yeah.
unused, yeah. It's more useful as a smart collection than just as a filter.
This follows what I believe. Everybody who's gotten into this uses them, but we all use them differently. And I think that's the magic of 10. It doesn't make you do things one way. It lets you do things the way you think you should do them, which I think rocks.
I've used it for. Actually, don't use that much, but one thing I have used it for is showing things with no keywords. So if I'm working on a version or something, and when I get to a place where like I'm happy with it and it's the hero, I take off the temp keywords or the needs this work. Like I have keywords indicating things that need to happen, like need to fix the sound or do this, and those get removed. And then as soon as everything is gone, it shows up in a list,
So use them a
and
little
that's
bit like
something
to-do markers.
that's been polished.
You probably know this, but in the filter menu, there's no ratings or keywords, the Control X. And
Yes.
I do a similar thing. I just hit Control X and make sure that's gone if you have something you have to use at all.
You know, I think that filter's quick. I don't like the fact that filter is basically library wide, and it's global. That's why I prefer setting up smart collections for those things that are in there.
I'll also do it for format-based keywords, things I want to keyword automatically. So for instance, if I have different resolutions that I want to be able to search in my timeline later, you'll set up a smart collection, so like 4096 by 2160. If you have some of that mixed in with 1080 footage, you'll select the 4096 by 2160, keyword everything, so that then when you come down into the timeline index, you can search and modify based on that frame size and resolution. So it's a quick way to add keywords across an entire database, more or less.
That's great.
Yeah.
Next question is from Thomas Carter in London. So we have gotten a lot of interaction from London, so
And Italy.
and Italy and Europe,
Amsterdam.
iMovie allows you to play continuously from one clip or favorite in the browser without hitting the next clip. I'd love to have this option in Final Cut 10. So I guess that's the
Okay.
yes.
Yep.
What I do on that, by the way, sometimes when I just as I'm watching a clip and it's almost at the end, I just have the down arrow.
Down arrow,
And it
and
just
watch
space
the
bar,
next.
just down arrow.
I just don't let it finish because then it just loops to the beginning and just going forward anyway.
Alex Goldner said you can make a smart collection whose format camera name equals GoPro. I'm not sure what he was referring to on that one, but he was probably
how I should have done.
Oh.
I really messed up. Thank you, Alex.
That's so funny.
Figured out extroverts. That was the point of this first thing, is it taught me every way not to do things efficiently.
No,
I think what he's saying is there's metadata built into the GoPro clips that let him know that it's already there, so you can build a smart collection that'll keep you from needing to tag it manually.
Right. Next question is, he said Alex Lindsay wants to return to the OpenDoc. Hopefully, that's actually what I was talking, transferring data. And he said hopefully that'll come with OS 10 Yosemite extensions, which is very interesting thought there. And then Joerg Nigley said, here's another one watching from Europe. So far they like the show, so
cool.
So the earlier time frame has worked for a lot of people here. A question for Mike. This is from Tubular Sensation.
Interesting name.
Interesting name.
Hippie parents, I'm guessing.
Yeah, exactly. When is your book coming out? Sorry about my screen name.
Oh, that's a good question. I'm working on, as everyone here knows, I'm working on a sort of feature-based Final Cut Pro manual. It's what worked for us, and ways to do things that have been proven out. And when it comes out, I'm hoping in the next couple of months I can have something that's relatively solid. The question out there is, and if you tweet me back at FCPX Features, your answer to this question is like, are you okay with something that still needs some polish to be out there, and knowing that it will be updated, because there's a ton of information in there. I was showing some of the guys earlier, and I want to have everyone at this table take a look at it. But there's a ton of information. There's some sections that need to be filled out. I'm hoping in the next couple of months I can have something that's complete, although maybe not perfect. And I'd rather get it out there sooner than later, because I know some people can benefit from my experience.
I bet everybody's going to say yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Give it to us sooner.
Yeah, we're big boys. You know, we want the data.
Right.
You know, so yeah. So
It's kind to him, because I did a little iBook from Jazz at the Nash, this project, and there is a certain amount of time it takes to get through the Apple system of vetting an iBook. In my case, it was like 4 months. So it might not be his fault of not getting it done. There's some hoops to jump through.
Yeah. Thanks.
The last question that we're gonna answer, I think we're running out of time, is this is from Nate Gubin in Utah. He said, "What is the best way to round trip from Final Cut to Logic and then back again?"
Xtapro.
Yeah, well,
I would say Xtapro. The XML kind of works, but it's not. It depends on how you have your project formatted. If you have a whole bunch of microphones that you're using, it's going to give you an extremely wide Logic project session, whatever it's called. If you have turned off everything that you want to turn off, and you exclude it from, if you disable all the audio that you don't want, and send it over, then you'll have a smaller program. But I think making AAFs and making AAFs with Xtapro and then importing them into Logic is probably the cleanest way to do it, because it comes with audio then, and it's not linking, and it's quicker.
And actually, if you use your component editing here, so do we have anything that has a couple components on it? So show audio components.
Expand audio components.
There we go. All right, there's only...
Those are stereo files, you'll see.
you can break them out as mono and fake it.
Yeah, there we go. We'll go to
Dual mono is kind of stereo.
Right?
dual mono, right?
There you go.
So one thing...
Right?
One thing you should, one thing you can definitely do is you can shift select. So if I go here, and we'll do the same thing here, you can, I've been using a control surface, so it's, forgot all these keyboard shortcuts. Anyway, so one thing that you might want to look into if you're in components mode and you know that certain things are across the same channel, and you want to have them all live in the same place when they come into Logic, you can use roles to, so we'll go up to edit roles, and we'll just add a couple, we'll call these dialogue, and call this like...
Bubbles.
Bubbles.
Kaiser roll and hot dog, but whatever.
So now, basically, if you tag your components, it's going to lay those out across a certain way. So you do bubbles, and you know, then I'd come down here and I'd tag shift select across those components that were similar, and then go apply. Oh, and I think I didn't do the thing I actually needed to do. So we'll go and we'll call this fish, right? So, so now I would apply the fish roll here, and then I'd shift select across these components. And this is far more interesting if you do it. I think I'm in the range tool, but all right. And we'll select bubbles. So now these would come in across the logic across the same track now because you shift selected. So if you're dealing with things, use your components and then turn off and turn on, like Mike was saying, the ones you don't want to see, and then drill down into the component level in your timeline and separate them out using subroles.
And when you say turn off and turn on, do you mean in the timeline index, disabling there, or with the V key to actually disable the clips?
Oh, in the patch panel in the inspector. So
this is a larger discussion because there's issues with like disabling when it's a clip, disabling the components is actually a mute, but it reflects as a volume all the way down in Pro Tools, which bums out Pro Tools people. There's some stuff here to fiddle, and this might be a separate conversation, which we can have.
How long do we want to sit here?
The
short answer is, if you don't want to come across the logic, the easiest way is to deselect from up there in the info tab. So, and that's gonna
that'll make it disappear. And if you let me have the mouse for a second.
Sorry, real quick. It's all yours.
if you do it like this and hit V, that's a mute. Okay. If you do it up here, it's it disables it and it won't show up. Yeah. So there's some funk to that.
You want to see a cool trick with components too?
Yeah.
So if you go and disable a component here, right? So for the most part, you're keeping it disabled across your mix. So you can do that across an entire string of these. So say we had a client that actually really needed this, and say you have a multicam and an audience, for instance, that you only want to hear occasionally to pop up and down. Well, what you can do is you disable in your timeline with the V key all of those components, and then you hold down R when you want it to kind of come up, and you use the enable, and then you have little fade handles there.
Then you can drag it up.
That can kind of come across.
That's pretty neat.
That's cool. That's cool to do. I don't think it's entirely supported.
Oh, it won't be in the logic round trip. This was completely separate.
We just I went off somewhere else. Yeah, exactly. But there's another cool thing.
It is a cool thing.
Very good.
But it's not a bug; it's a feature. It's selective disabling.
Right. So I think we've ran this one to a full 2 hours.
Wow.
We couldn't stop talking. We couldn't start covering. I know it's hard to believe that it went 2 hours, but thank you guys all. So Mike, is there anywhere people should follow you or find you?
On Twitter it's at FCPX Features plural, and that's where I'm tweeting out some feature tips, where I will be pushing my book, which is coming out soon, hopefully. And if anybody has any questions, want to know anything, let me know. I'm happy to share and help people get on their feet or get out of the hole that they've dug themselves.
Sam, where can people find you?
So I'm with a company called FCP Works, and if you want to see kind of what I'm doing, I've got a daily blog now going, smaller blogs every day, Monday through Friday. If you go to fcpworks.com and then under blog, there'll be something every single day from us, hopefully. We've been keeping it going for about 3 weeks, so every day there's something new, and then you can follow us at FCP Works on Twitter.
Great. Bill, where can people find you?
People can find me at New Video AZ. That's a tag you can use on Twitter. I think I've got it through most of the social media stuff. And I would love to hear from people who just want to toss in ideas about tagging and stuff like that, because I think that's a growing area. There's just so much complexity to it. So if people have great tips, send them my way, and I will try to compile them and send them back out in some format that everybody who shared some can get back.
Perfect. Steve, Mark.
Well,
go ahead, Steve.
Mark and I, proprietor of RippleTraining.com, or purveyor, whatever.
At Ripple Training.
At Ripple Training, Twitter, and then RippleTraining.com for our tutorials and our plugins.
And I have at Markspen, MARKSPEN, just for my personal stuff.
And I'm going to get to the challenge. I'm a little behind. I didn't do the 24-hour. Mark challenged me.
The ice bucket challenge.
I had big plans, and then I was like, oh, I don't have time for this. Sorry.
There's still time.
You wanted
You wanted to do a really big.
big. You were going to do it big.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, you know.
That's why I ended up going simple, because I just knew I wouldn't get the big.
I probably should have just gone simple.
actually
Hopefully
assume-
by the end of this week I'll have.
Michael Garber has an amazing ice bucket challenge. He did it after
He was
Citizen
great.
Kane.
Oh, it was brilliant.
What did he,
He did a whole Citizen Kane thing with it. It's crazy.
It's like the whole opening Citizen Kane, Rosebud, the whole thing, black and white.
Oh, that's
Brilliant.
great.
You would love it. You would love it.
He's got too much time on his hands.
That is fantastic.
I was impressed.
All right. Well, thank you all for watching, for sitting through most of this, or some of this, or however much you scanned. It was really great to have you. This was episode. We don't know when episode 4 is coming out. We have a little bit of a production crunch in October, so we'll see. It'll be sometime, most likely in October, that we'll do it, but it may not be exactly a month away. But let us know what you think of this. So definitely jump up on YouTube afterwards. I mean, now we're done in Hazu, jump up to YouTube and put some comments in there. We read literally, I mean, until we get big enough, I guess. But right now, we read every single comment. All of us do. Like, we go read them a couple times and think about what we could do next. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you think we could do better. Let us know. This is kind of a new format. We're kind of constantly experimenting. So we're really hoping to get your feedback. And then also remember to subscribe to Pixel Corps so you'll know when these are coming up. And also follow us on Twitter. Most of us are tweeting out that we're doing these events. And so if you want to stay in the know, definitely check that out. So thank you again.